Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's Oxfordian Outlook. And today we are going to be talking and having a conversation with Rishma Dattani, an experienced freelance consultant that has demonstrated significant experience in the industry of higher education, highly skilled in curriculum, design, learning, teaching, assessment, has worked in the transnational education sector, so a lot of experience working abroad with different institutions, experience in quality management, accreditation, validation, reviews. Also worked as a trainer with both in the UK and internationally, so got a very diverse exposure in terms of quality assurance and management, capacity building, student engagement, and employability. So, strong consulting professional with an MA in economics of public policy from the University of Leicester and a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. Passionate about learning, teaching, assessment, and the student experience. And I'm going to welcome Rishma Dattani, who is here with us with our topic today to talk about the power of mentorship in education. We hear about mentorship, coaching in various fields, but not so often in education, and really very much about the learner to the leader. So welcome, Rishma, today and joining with us on Oxfordian Outlook. And just tell our audience are here because they're really keen to know a bit more. I've tried to capture your experience, but I'm sure I haven't done the justice that and you can actually share with our audience and tell them a little bit more about yourself before we indulge into the topic.
Well, thank you, Shazia. It's really great to join this today. I've got quite a wide, varied background, I guess, in higher education, both from an academic but also a professional services sort of background. I think it's perhaps worth starting off by saying I never actually thought of becoming a teacher, never thought I would end up in lecturing, and I kind of stumbled on it, but it's one of the best things I've ever done. And, you know, as you said at the end, I'm passionate about learning, teaching, assessment, and overall that student experience and the satisfaction that you get from actually seeing those students who perhaps start in the first year, who perhaps lack that confidence, and who graduate in that final year with their degrees. I mean, that is something special. And it's close to my heart. And I love those graduation ceremonies. Just a little bit about me. I started life as a lecturer in economics. And as a lecturer, obviously, you know, unlike teaching in schools, you don't necessarily, or when I started, you didn't necessarily need a teaching qualification. So a lot of what I was doing was learning on the job. And that's where having somebody else, mentor, a coach, having somebody there by your side or somebody you can call on, I think was really, really important. Now, back when I started as a lecturer, mentoring and coaching wasn't really a thing. So, yes, you had people supporting you, and it often was the line manager who would be there and kind of tell you how things were done or what meetings you needed to attend. But very rarely did you have somebody that you could just sort of sit with over a coffee, just have a chat, or maybe just reflect on the day or the week or the month. So I think, you know, that's something that has developed within education. I think people now going in will often be assigned somebody as a mentor. I kind of started as a lecturer, but as a lecturer, your activities aren't just about teaching. it's important that you develop other skill sets. So supporting students is clearly an important one, because not only are you supporting them in teaching, but it's also the pastoral support that becomes important. And I remember actually kind of being introduced to various different people who had these different skill sets. So you often, as I say, don't have one person that's a mentor, but you actually have several different people who are skilled in different areas. And I remember sort of kind of learning, I guess, from these more experienced people. So I developed sort of an interest in supporting students more than through just teaching. It was actually kind of providing some counselling, and that kind of moved into things like career development. But I sort of through that I developed quite a wide skill set, and I progressed through the ranks, if I can call it that. I became an associate dean in the business school. Thoroughly enjoyed what I did, and in that kind of role, I was involved in leading reviews, validations of the business school programs. So that was kind of another area, an aspect that I developed. But I also remember that as an associate dean, you kind of step into these roles, and okay, you've got your associate deans who might have been your line manager, that you kind of see as a mentor, and you kind of think, oh, I like the way she did that, or she really chairs those meetings well, and you learn from those kind of experiences. But I remember being there, and actually when I was appointed, I was one of the youngest associate deans, and it was quite a role that you step into, that you think, oh my God, am I going to do well in this? So I was fortunate. We had a centre of learning and teaching at the time, and the head of that centre had actually decided to bring all the associate deans together in a learning and teaching sort of group, as a group. And that was one of the best things that we had. It was a forum where I could actually kind of share, talk to other people who'd been in the role for a while, and actually learn from other people. So again, I'd got mentors in that sort of group, albeit they weren't formally assigned as mentors. And some of them actually took me under their wing because they'd been doing that job for a fair while. And I then sort of moved out of the business school and moved into international, because I'd been doing some international work, forming partnerships and things. And I moved into the international centre, and was deputy director there, where I then developed, if you like, more skills around partnership working, developed new processes and so on. And again, it was a role that was new, so I was able to carve it in the way and shape that I wanted it to go. I was aware of gaps, I was aware of pitfalls, I was aware of good practice, and it was about how can I bring all the schools and faculties together? How can we share good practice? So again, I was able to kind of bring people together, and almost kind of ended up in a mentor role for people that were kind of coming in new to partnerships and so on. And then sort of from that, I moved into heading up academic partnerships at the University of Wolverhampton. So I'd done quite a lot of different things there. And I guess I moved from a situation of being a mentee, albeit informally, to a sort of role of mentor, where I then also started to act as a mentor to new starters, placement students, interns. And again, that was really satisfying, I think. So that's me in a nutshell, I think.
No, I think you've really shared a phenomenal journey of where you started as a learner to a leader, which is part of our topic, and obviously gone into depth into the mentorship within the education sector, in particular higher education. I was just writing down a few keywords that were coming up in my mind as you were talking. And I think it would be good for our audience to kind of, we can unpack a few, because sometimes when we, are assigned a mentor to kind of take us through any journey or support us, if you like, through the journey, there can be a stigma. Oh, perhaps I feel I'm an expert in what I do, but now I've got somebody who I've got to work with because perhaps I'm not good enough. What would you like to share with our audience on that? Because I think it's really important not to see it as a stigma, but more as a collaborative learning approach to accelerating your journey from where you are to where you want to go.
Absolutely, Shazia. I mean, I think it's so important. I think people come into roles, and even if you've been in an institution or an organization for a while and you know the ropes, actually, I think having somebody that you can go to that has that additional knowledge, that extra skill set that you perhaps need to develop, but also, actually, importantly, their ability to be able to introduce you to people, their ability to advise you on what you need to do next to develop your career path or your career rung, as it were. I think that's important. Being a mentor and a mentee, there are key skills that I think both need to have. One is about listening.
Mm-hmm.
Both need to be able to listen to each other. I think it's a friendly environment, in inverted commas. So you can meet up informally over a coffee or a scheduled meeting, however you kind of choose to do that. But listening is a key skill. I think it's also about being able to take advice as a mentee, take advice. And because somebody might say, well, actually, if you're reflecting on your day or a meeting or something, or a goal that you've got and how you're attempting to achieve it, if your mentor actually tells you, well, maybe that's not the right approach, maybe you need to think of X, Y, and Z, that's, constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And not everybody is able to take constructive criticism well. So again, it's about being able to acknowledge that actually that person has probably been through what I'm going through, and therefore is coming in with that knowledge and insight of how best to approach this. So I think that's another aspect that you need to be aware of. I think as a mentee, I think it's important that you do take notes and actually treat it as a learning tool, because that's what your mentor is. They're actually providing you with their time and giving you, hopefully that skill set that you can then develop and take and move forward so that you can progress up through the ranks, as it were.
And I totally resonate with what you say there, because if I take myself back to the early days of when I first qualified as a teacher, and at the time again, and I'm just going to say it as it is, that sometimes you're assigned a mentor, but that mentor is not there. So it's a label that, we've assigned a mentor and you're left sometimes to find your own ground. And you can feel insecure to ask, because you think, well, actually, I don't want to be judged. I'm a qualified teacher. I'm here. I've been assigned a class or, a group of students, and I just need to get on with it. And it can be quite overwhelming at times when you're learning the system, because theory and practical they're two completely different elements. And I think people fear to reach out and ask for that support because of that judgment. And when you talked about constructive criticism, that's sometimes, how you, and the part of the skills of listening, but then active listening, being self-aware, because I think that's really important. You may be observed on your learning or teaching journey, and things might not go to plan. But as long as you're self-aware and you recognize that, in my view, that's a big brownie tick there, because it's far worse if you're not self-aware of why the learning didn't take place as planned. But most importantly, that emotional intelligence of accepting praise as well. So it's not just the constructive developmental points, but appreciation. So if I share just a small, I remember one day I walked out of the classroom and the principal, if you like, or the head of the school said, Shazia, can you come to my office for a moment? The first thought that came into my head, what have I done wrong? You know, because it was that notion of you're being invited to the office, your head, and she was my mentor as well. She's maybe, you know, and I never really acknowledged that there was something else. So I came in and I sat down and she leaned over and she said, I just wanted to say you're doing a phenomenal job. Well done. And that smile on my face and that appreciation and recognition really changed my mood and morale. And I went out with, I think, tenfold energy to carry on doing what I was doing. So for me, you know, what you've just said there is so, so important, that anybody, where it doesn't matter what stage, whether they're in a role, not in a role, thinking of going into a role, where it could be even in a freelance role and wanting to set up as a consultant, getting or finding, identifying a mentor that you think you can get on with, because the relationship's got to be there, is so, so important to help you move from point A to point B. Do you feel that, how do you feel the culture out there is about, you know, let me go out and getting a mentor? Do you think that it's widely done now in comparison to before? Or do you still find that there are apprehensions?
I think there are probably still some apprehensions. I think it probably depends on the type of person you are, if I'm honest. I think mentoring is more accepted. I think people are now assigned mentors, as you say, and often it tends to be the line manager, which isn't always the best thing, because you actually want somebody that's perhaps not involved in your performance management. You want somebody that you can kind of have as an objective person that you can go and talk to and learn from. So I think it's fair to say it is more accepted now. I think I am aware of people that now go and seek their own mentors, because you know it's a voluntary activity ultimately. Because as a mentor, you might not get assigned time, you might not get assigned any kind of benefits as such from the organisation. So you are giving up your time, but there are advantages for both individuals, and therefore I think it's important that you seek your own mentor. Often you will be in a position where you look up to people because you've kind of seen them in action, as it were. So you want to perhaps kind of learn from them and think, well, how did you get to be where you are? What was your journey? And actually just sort of perhaps phoning them, setting up a meeting over a coffee can actually just start that ball rolling. So yes, I think it is perhaps more accepted now than it perhaps was. But there may well be apprehension on the part of some individuals, purely down to personality, I think.
And I think you're absolutely right. And also it depends on the situation or the context. So when you're in a formal setting, which is more work-based, whether it's FE or, university, higher education, further education, and then you've got individuals who want to establish themselves independently, because they've been in the industry for a significant period of time and they're ready to step away from that structured environment and perhaps utilize those skills and push themselves out into the market. So my final question, before you give a closing message, is that fine line between organizational support and mentorship in an educational institution and then more commercial, so as a entrepreneur going out or a freelancer, and again, should they seek a mentor? but and when they are seeking or looking, if you like, for one, these days we're in the digital medium, you know, everybody goes on online and there's the Google search is on or the LinkedIn search is on. There's that element of, oh, this person's credible because is an influence you know, an influential or an influencer in the education space, has, you know, visibility on this platform, visibility on that platform, visibility here and there, must be far greater or far better than this other individual who perhaps is not an outgoing person, has, you know, is a bit of an introvert and doesn't like to put themselves out, but at the same time may probably have great skills and experience too, but due to not having that visibility, may not be in the limelight. So the price points change as well. So what advice would you give to our potential mentees who are seeking a mentor, and what steps or guidelines can they take to help them make that decision?
Okay, I think it's important for you as a mentee to understand what you want to get out of it. Because if you know what you want to get out of that journey, then it will be easier for you to identify who is going to be the best mentor for you. If you want to be somebody that wants to put themselves out there, maybe it's the mentor that is in that sort of role that's going to be a better guide for you. But if you're not necessarily interested in that and you're more about learning the skills that you perhaps need to kind of work as an entrepreneur, freelance, or whatever, then the other person that perhaps doesn't put themselves out might be the person that's best fit for you. And it is about that best fit. So, yeah, I think it's about knowing what you want to get or where you want to be and what kind of role you want to be in that will shape the kind of mentor that you perhaps want to try and identify with.
Absolutely. And I guess it's about finding the right person that you connect with and build a good rapport with, because you want to feel safe with them. So I can see questions popping up now from the audience, and I've got one here. So it follows on nicely from the discussion. How do I find a mentor? I'm just out of uni and need help. Not too much detail there, so not very clear what kind of help is needed. So I'm going to sort of allow you to kind of elaborate a little bit, and possibly we may end up getting further sub questions because as you respond.
Okay. I mean, if you're just out of university, you don't have a job. I mean, one of the things that we often kind of think a mentor is just somebody who's got that much more experience than you. It might be that actually you've got your peers that you can turn to. Your peers are in a similar sort of situation. So I think it's about talking to other people that are in a similar position. Some might have graduated a little bit before you, and therefore they've been through that journey a little bit ahead and are a little bit ahead of you. So I think that's one way to try and find a mentor. I'm also aware of, if you formed relationships with lecturers at your university, keep in touch with them. They can often be a good source of a mentorship for you. So those are two starting points, I'd say. Your peer network, and also, people that you've met at the university. I will also say that the careers guidance people at the university, you should actually contact them. They will provide you with some kind of support that you need to allow you to get into a job. I hope that helps.
And it's quite a broad question, you see, because when you're coming out of uni, we're not always clear about whether it's employability focused or where it's going. Yeah. But yes, reach out to the support you have around you. And I really agree, aligned with the fact that your tutor or lecturer or whoever you've worked with is your first point of call, because they're always there to support and guide. Yeah. That takes me to a point where I remember in my degree when I struggled with my thesis towards the end, and I thought I'm going to give up because I can't do this. I've got too much going on. And it was my tutor that sat me down and sort of structured it to in a way that it became more manageable. And had he not done that, probably wouldn't have moved forward. So I totally agree with that. Let's have a look if there are any more questions. If there aren't, and if they do come along. However, I think towards the end, because we like to do this weekly and we like to keep it sort of within the 30 minutes, bite size, so that people can absorb what we put out. So in terms of your closing message, we've talked about the journey from learner to leader, the power a mentorship can have on an individual. Yes, we've talked about it in education, but it can be the same out of education. But as a closing message, what would you like to say as a takeaway for the audience we have with us today?
Okay, I mean, my message would be that mentoring can give you long-lasting friendships. So whilst you've got a relationship as a mentor and a mentee over a specified period, actually often that will turn into a lasting friendship. And it's not just about that lasting friendship, but it's about that sort of ability to then sort of be able to reflect with one another, not just in a business context or education context, but actually at a personal level. So I think there are huge benefits in becoming a mentor, trying to sort of try and find a way forward to help. I think that's ultimately what it is. It's a way of being able to help somebody better themselves, improve themselves, and ultimately get satisfaction from that process.
Thank you very much. And as we close today, just to close after Rishma, I'd say you as a mentor benefit equally as the mentee. And I've learned a lot from those that I have mentored. I think they've opened my eyes at times. I think, oh, that perspective that I haven't actually seen. So we mutually benefit, whether you're a mentor or a mentee, you both take away lifelong learning and I would say a relationship that would enable you to stay connected for years. I mean, I've stayed connected with many of my mentors for a very, very long time. So that brings us to the end of our session today. I think we're right on time. So thank you, Rishma, for taking your time out to come and join us today. I know how busy you are in your schedule. So thank you very much. Thank you to those of you who joined on and listened and took part in the session. And we look forward to seeing you again next week, same time, 4:30 on a Friday with Oxfordian Outlook. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a lovely afternoon.